Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate your time tonight. We have a fun conversation tonight around setting up a golf simulator. We've taken some questions over the past couple of weeks. We've brought those into the slides for tonight. We'll go through some of those. I'm going to do quick intros here. We'll talk about some of the logistics, and then we'll just jump right into the content. I'm Reid Colson. I run yardstickgolf.com. I also run the golf simulator subreddit. Have with me tonight Joe from Ace Indoor Golf. Known Joe for, gosh, probably 10, 11 years now through indoor golf, and have been really impressed with the work that Ace does. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Joe Neumeyer from Ace Indoor Golf. I've been in the golf simulator business since 2005. Started with Ace Indoor Golf. Started off in installations, worked my way up into director of operations, and started Ace Indoor Golf in 2012. Been doing it for about 11 and a half years now. Previous background, I was a military guy, Navy, operated nuclear reactors, so pretty heavy technical background and a lot of hands-on work with simulators themselves, a variety of technologies, and going into my 19th year of doing golf simulators. So a little bit of knowledge to share with everybody. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Hopefully I can answer, and if we can't, we'll make sure we get you an answer after.
Great, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Looking forward to what you have to share with us tonight. So quick logistics for everybody. Within your GoToWebinar, you should see a little panel at the top. This is actually from our last event. You can see at the top, if you click on the everyone drop down, you can change or toggle the view. You can view everyone, you can just view who's talking or the presenter. We've got everybody muted. We asked you to just keep your line on mute your headset until the Q&A. And if you have questions, let's take them when you get them, not wait till the end. There's a chat on the right. We'll be watching the chat. If you have a question you want us to talk about, put it in there, and we will try to address that. So we do have some questions that we'll start with. We'll tee it up with that. And again, if you have questions along the way, please ask them via the chat. So Joe, this is some of the questions that we got from the Yardstick Golf group. The first one is really kind of talking through if you have a simulator, or if you're looking to set up a simulator for a specific application, which simulators are best for which applications. And maybe we could start with hitting indoors versus hitting outdoors. Are there certain simulators that you feel work better for an indoor scenario, an outdoor scenario, or ones that you think work well for both?
Sure. So years past, I've always felt that the camera-based systems were the best indoors, radar the best outdoors. However, with that said, with the growth of the indoor simulator world, and especially indoor outdoor, people taking their portable simulators such as like the Quad, SkyTrack, the Rapsodos, the Mevos, they're getting really close, especially with the balls from Titleist, and so I still lean towards the camera-based systems indoors. But with that said, the radars are getting extremely close. Same with outdoors, and obviously on the PGA Tour, you see a lot of quads out there on the driving range, as well as TrackMan. There are flight scopes being used still, so the applications are blending between the indoor and the outdoor. A lot of it really boils down to what's the size of your space. Do you have the height for an overhead camera system? Do you have the length if you want to go radar? Obviously, what's your budget? Is your room narrowed? Is it a right-left configuration? Do you want a center strike? So a lot of those, what we do at ACE, we go through a consultation. We understand your needs and obviously your budget, and we're pretty agnostic. Matter of fact, we're very agnostic when it comes to which applications are best suited for an individual. And that's what we do. We just take people through a list of questions, and we try to determine what's best suited for their particular application.
Gotcha. Curious, like maybe if we could go a little bit deeper, like when you talk about camera systems being best for indoors, do you feel like that's just because it's going to pick up the information it needs to, kind of do the math and project the shot in a shorter distance with a camera than it can with the other technologies? Or is there some other reason why you feel like the cameras are working best
I
indoors?
do. With the stereoscopic cameras, they get, anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 frames per second. So they're picking up most of the ball data is really varied on spin, whether it's back spin, if it's axis spin. So as a camera system, they get it within usually about a meter. So 1 yard, they get all the information they need. Radar systems, again, are getting better. However, they do need ball flight. They need X amount of distance behind the ball, which is normally somewhere around 7 feet. Usually they require 10 to 12 feet in ball flight, if not 14, to get optimal data. So a lot of the radars are limited based upon length of the room. So again, it just really depends on what's your space configuration, but I have always been more of a fan of camera-based indoors. If you got the height, like a Unicore IXO, Foresight Hawk, obviously that's they're getting more expensive, the QED. So if TrackMan's coming out with a new unit, but I've always been personally, I'm more of a fan of the camera-based indoors.
Okay. And then for outside, did you say that you did like the cameras for outside as well, or did you have a different recommendation for outside?
So the radar, by default, the technology picks up the ball the whole flight. Now, with that said, the camera-based is also pretty good, depending on which one you get. I mean, you got the iMini now from Unicore, you got the GC3, obviously the quad, which if you look at any driving range on the PGA Tour, you see quads and you see TrackMan. Used to be a lot of more TrackMan, obviously for the data, but the quad with the spin data, especially for the wedges, that's why a lot of the pros use it. It's also got the LED screen where you don't have to worry about hooking up a phone or an iPad. But there used to be more of a distinction between the two, between radar and camera based, but I think the radars have made a lot of progress with regards to indoor use.
Gotcha. Okay. It does look like we got a question in the chat. I was considering the FlightScope Mevo Plus. How does the launch monitor connect to the PC? Is it USB 3 or USB-C or some other sort of connection? Do you know?
I don't know that offhand. So
okay. I would imagine that would be on their website.
Yeah, so on the box. It's been a while. I got a couple buddies personally, scratch golfers actually, that have had the Mevo Plus. Actually, I have a very good buddy who's qualified for a couple PGA Tour events, and they say the Mevo Plus being used indoors is pretty darn accurate. So they love it. They use it with GS Pro.
Gotcha. Well, I guess, since you mentioned distance, there have been some conversations in the forum around, seems like their sim is working in some cases, but in other cases, the distance appears to be off. Are there ways that you recommend folks deal with or troubleshoot when they feel like they're having distance issues with their sim?
Yeah, so real quick, most of the technology, before I go to that question, I'm sorry, most of the technologies I see nowadays, wireless connection, most of it's USB 3, because they're all PC based, a lot of them don't work with Macs. But with that said, USB 3 is normally the connection, and then a lot of them are actually going Ethernet cables nowadays as well. So those are generally the three connection points, wireless, Ethernet, or USB 3. Generally speaking, for most of the technologies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what shows up at the forum from time to time is folks talking about having, potential distance issues with their simulators, looking for help figuring out how to troubleshoot or make corrections to, what they're getting from readings on your simulator. So what, kind of you've seen best practices for maybe troubleshooting, figuring out what's causing the issue with maybe getting incorrect distances and how folks might be able to deal with that.
Sure. So there used to be, back in the day, a manual way to change or augment your distances. With that said, if you have distance issues nowadays with most of the technologies, it typically is either a calibration issue or the indoor swing syndrome is actually real. So generally speaking, people swing about 10% slower as far as you club head speed indoors. So that is a real thing. Most people don't know that. I've seen it many, many times. And in the third issue, quite frankly, is people just don't hit the ball as far as they think they are. So most people, like for me personally, a single digit handicap, I worry about ball carry. That's what the pros do, ball carry. And that's what people, for the most part, don't get correct. As an amateur golfer, most people are always short, just the way it is. They don't hit the ball as far as they do. They hit it, they don't flush it. Maybe the balls, I've seen balls have little cracks in them that affect it. What kind of mat you're hitting off will affect it. Are you catching the ball clean? Are you catching the turf before you catch the ball, which obviously will kill distance. So a lot of the times, if you actually have club data as well, you'll start seeing where you hit the ball, meaning are you hitting it squarely in the center of the club face? Every millimeter offset, right or left, actually kills it distance-wise, obviously. But there's no way to, if you get in the software and adjust, you can adjust altitude in some of the software so the ball will go further that way. But most of the technologies and the launch planners nowadays don't need to be corrected with regards to distance. It's not the technology in most cases.
So it's mostly, something to do with impact, indoor swing syndrome or something like that.
A lot of times, quite frankly, and I've had some very bad cases, a lot of times, quite frankly, it boils down to ego. But the indoor swing syndrome, especially when you get it, you're indoors, you don't think about it, but you're indoors, you're confined, you got a wall, you got a ceiling, you got the wall behind you. You don't realize that your swing speed indoors is actually going to be slower than outdoors until you get really used to the system and hitting indoors. Once you get used to it, I think what you'll see is your distances starting to mesh with regards to indoor and outdoor. What I'd recommend, quite frankly, is a lot of the software nowadays have a gapping program where you can actually hit. They'll take you through a series of so it's basically hit your 5-iron, your 6-iron, your 7-iron, your 8-iron, and it'll essentially gap your club so you know exactly how far. But keep in mind, it's not going to roll like it is outside, especially the driver. Outside you can get 20, 30, 40 yards of roll. Typically, you don't get that in the simulator software. So when you talk about distance, I really would recommend you more lean towards your actually carry distance versus overall distance, because it will be different between indoors and outdoors.
Gotcha. Cool. That's really helpful. I was going to ask why the indoor swing syndrome exists, but I think you explained that. We got a follow up on the first question. You mentioned some indoor radar-based sims require 14 foot of ball flight. Specifically speaking about TrackMan, they say that TM4 suggested distance is 12 feet. Do you see benefit in going to 14 of ball flight distance as opposed to 12 with that specific sim? Are they going to pick up any accuracy or anything if they add?
So obviously you're going to get 2 more feet of readings with the radar, but if you're using the RCT balls in 12 feet, I think it's going to be so minimal that you won't know the difference. However, with that said, if you do have 14 feet, that's probably going to be better than 12 feet, just because it gives you that extra split second of ball data getting relayed back to the computer and the software.
Gotcha. And this is one of mine, actually. So one of the things I find is the misreads are most often on short game, right? Chips, pitches, that kind of thing. What's the driver of that? Why is that, where I see most of my misreads?
Depends on what launch monitor you're using. A lot of the overhead camera-based units, you won't get that. Something that's not taking a lot of pictures or ones that stand beside you. What are you talking? Do you have a particular launch monitor you're having misreads? Now, radar, for generally speaking, radar has a typically a hard time picking up that low soft shot because it just doesn't get the readings. It's looking for something a little more speedier and more of a higher launch angle. But if you're doing those soft like bump and go chips and like putting, obviously it's gotten better. I guess kind of reason why I'm not a fan of radar indoors is the short game and putting. But a lot of people don't worry about that.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is more kind of like at the facility. Sometimes I'm seeing that.
Yeah, it depends on, that could be a calibration issue. It could be, with the limited circle with regards to like an overhead unit, maybe you're not getting it into the circle, properly, but it could be a variety of reasons.
Gotcha. Okay. Question in the panel, excuse me, from the viewers. What % of simulator sales are more interested in game improvement and analytics versus entertainment? Knowing Sims can do both, like, do you see more folks interested in the metrics and analytics and game improvement, or more interested in, entertainment and gameplay?
Wonderful question. That is a question that we ask everyone. What are you more leaning towards? Up until a couple years ago, I would say it was heavily geared towards entertainment. However, with that said, as the price of the technologies have gone down and the accuracy has gone up, it is definitely leaning more towards the game improvement side nowadays. So we're getting more and more. I want to work on my game. Yes, I want to play courses, but I want the data to work on my game. So the game improvement definitely is increased over the last couple of years as the technology and the accuracy has gone up and the price has come down.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, cool. Well, I'll go back to the kind of planned questions. One of the questions that was, comes up a lot is ratio issues. My laptop is one ratio, but my screen's different. Like, how do you think about, maybe is that next slide the one that kind of talks a little bit about through distance and screen ratio? Is that helpful?
Yeah. So this is always a tricky question for most people because most people don't understand what throw distance really means. I've seen a lot of people get a projector before they figure out what their size of the screen is. I recommend you don't do that. I would figure out what your viewable image is width-wise. I mean, you can do a couple. If it's less than 12 feet, typically we're at a 4:3 aspect ratio. If it's more than 12, depending on the height of the room, we can get into a 16:10. By default, the 16:10 is going to get you kind of 1080p versus like a 720 or 1020. It's basically a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it's kind of think of it as one of the older TVs. The graphics just aren't going to be as crisp for the most part. So, and then so figure out the width of your screen. You're going to go wall to wall. What's the height? You're going to figure out the viewable image, okay? Or you're getting a cage or an enclosure where obviously it's fixed, whether it's 4:3 or 16:10, 16:9 as well. So figure out the viewable width, figure out where you're going to mount a projector. So the throw distance is the ratio of the width versus how far back the lens is, okay? So once you figure that out, you can determine what kind of projector you need. And like I said, a lot of people get a projector. I just highly recommend not doing that. Figure out your viewable width, figure out where you can mount your projector. Do you want to mount it? I'm not a fan of mounting it in front of you because it can get hit. I've seen people do that with short throws. I need a short throw. Well, you don't. It can be placed behind you without creating a shadow. That's what, we have a full design team that mock out, in our design drawings. We usually typically use a 6-foot golfer. We figure out the width, figure out the height, figure out how far behind the golfer you can actually mount the projector. With the features nowadays on the projectors, you can mount it off to the side, use the cornerstoning, so you can have it kind of slanted, and then you can actually fix each individual corner to make sure that's a square image and it looks good. But selecting the right projector, I would highly recommend figuring out how you're mounting your screen, what your width is, what your height is, figuring out what aspect ratio it is, and then select your projector. A lot of times nowadays we lean towards the laser projectors. They're solid. You don't have to worry about the bulbs. You don't have to worry about replacement, heating up, and they typically last a lot longer, as well as the contrast ratios and the crispness of the image is much better with the lasers. So right here we have projectorcentral.com, projectorpeople.com. I'd recommend going on there. You can they'll actually calculate it for you as far as your width and your throw distance of where you mount each individual projector. So I highly recommend using that. Obviously, you're more than welcome to call Ace Indoor Golf, and we can help with all the designs and the screens, projectors, etc. Walk you through that.
Awesome, thanks. So talking about screens, thoughts on getting the best image, right? So a lot of questions that I see on there are like, how can I clean an impact screen? How can I limit or get marks off? How do I get wrinkles and creases out?
So a light steamer is the easiest answer for wrinkles and creases. It does depend on what kind of screen material you're using. So we have about 4 different kinds of materials that we use for screens. We always tell people, obviously, clean clubs, clean balls. One thing that people don't realize is that as you Sharpie, as you mark your balls for outdoor use, even if it's a week old and dry, that Sharpie will come off on your screens. As the ball hits the screen in the spin, whether it's going 3,000 for a driver or 9,000 or 10,000 for a wedge, as that hits the screen and stays there for that brief second, that ball is spinning, and those Sharpie marks will come off on that screen. So Magic Eraser is a good. You can clean them. So you can put them in, do a delicate wash in your washing machine. So it is possible to clean them. A lot of the marks you actually see on screens are actually burn marks, which people don't realize. As the ball hits it, there's a coating on a lot of the screen materials that give it this kind of the sheen when you project it, and it's a lot of the FR, fire resistant stuff as well. But as the ball hits it, it'll actually spin and it actually creates burn marks. So those you can't get out.
All right, so the next question, I think it just says handling 4.3 screen with 16:9 projector, floor and ceiling protection. I guess maybe talk a little bit about, because I feel like we addressed a bit of the 4.3 and 16:9. What are you seeing in terms of, like, I guess floor and ceiling protection? Floor might be a little bit more about shock absorption, or maybe landing area, and as far as, like, protecting the ceiling from balls. So
we use basically 2x2 carpet tiles. It's a 5/8 inch padded, kind of like a soft rubber flooring you see, but they have carpet on them. We have our own proprietary tiles as well at Ace Indoor Golf. They're 2x4s, 2x8s, and 2x10s. So that's what we just use adhesive to, and then we use some drywall screws as well, especially on the ceiling. You don't have to use it on the side walls, but that's how we normally protect the ceiling. The floor, if you're talking to me, obviously most floors don't need to be protected. If they're referring to the projector, there are some coverings, projector coverings that you can get for the floor. I'm not a fan of floor mounted projectors whatsoever. I don't think they're needed. They tend to overheat and they move, and they're usually in the way of the ball flight. So I rarely use any floor mounted projectors. So mine are always in the overhead, and we don't really need to protect them, because as we go through the design process, we put the projector out of the way of the ball and all the way of the golfer in the club.
Okay, talk a little bit about sound reduction.
So again, the panels that we use for the walls are the sound reduction. And we also use acoustic tiles, but those tend to get a little more expensive. You know, same ones you use for like a home theater. They're an inch, you know, basically fiberglass wrapped in a nice fabric. So you can use those. Curtains, if you don't want to put anything on the walls and adhere to them, we do curtains, like retractable curtains, come off about 3 inches of the, you know. So there are a variety of ways. It obviously depends on the environment and budget. So like I said, acoustic panels are expensive. Curtains you can get pretty cheap. You can go to Amazon, or we make them as well to get you know, 5 foot or 8 foot retractable curtains to protect anything that hits the wall. Ceiling, we've used baffles, kind of like we call them Arabian baffles, where you Velcro. I mean, you can just, and they just kind of loop. So they hit the baffle and the fabric before they hit obviously the drywall. So it's those are usually the ways we, not only for a safety purpose, but acoustics and sound. It kind of takes care of both.
I got another question here around ball return and placing automatic. It'd be helpful to get a little bit more complete question, because I'm guessing a little bit of intent. But I think probably folks are asking here is, you know, what types of methods are there in sort of automatic ball return, you know, versus going to collect them after they hit the screen?
Yeah, you got like Power Tee and a couple of Golf Zone obviously uses them. To do that, it requires some ceiling height because you got to raise the floor. Usually it's somewhere between 6 to 10 inches off the floor that you have to account for the automatic tee up system and the ball return. Couple different ways to do it. Some of them you just pour the balls in to like a tray system underneath, and they just pop up one at a time. You manually fill it. If you want to slope the floor back and it comes into like an automatic return where it just automatically goes under and you don't have to do anything. So those are expensive. I personally am not, I mean, I understand they're convenient, and they're, especially over in Asia, they almost demand them. Here in America, we don't really see the application that much. To me personally, it's just one more thing that can go wrong. So that completely is up to the individual user if they just like that, but most of the time we don't touch it.
Gotcha. Hey, I'm going to go on a tangent just because, you know, you prompted a question for me. You know, I know you guys see a lot that's going on in the market and attend all the shows. Like, what new technology is coming out or is already out that you're excited about? I know there's like, you know, putt view and things like that. What else, or even that, like, is kind of exciting that you see coming to either home or commercial applications?
I think a lot of it's going to be more software based now. TrackMan's coming out, Golf Zone came out with a lot of like tournaments that amateurs can play. I think with like the DraftKings and the FanDuels, I think you're going to start seeing some betting. So Pin Seeker's another one. So I think most of the, you know, golfers are gamblers for the most part. We all, you know, whether we all like to play a little side game, you know, it just is what it is. So I think that's what's kind of coming. Putt view and the putting, yeah, they're cool. They are a little on the expensive side, so they're kind of limited in the retail and you know, kind of really limited on the residential side. But I think it's mainly going to be coming from the software world and online gaming, peer-to-peer, the Pin Seekers of the world. You know, TrackMan's coming out. Obviously, you got the Tiger Woods Golf League that got delayed, but I think a lot of that's going to start coming to fruition, where you're going to get some heavy hitters involved in the corporate world to start sponsoring these kind of online tournaments and peer-to-peer play. And with so many people in the homes nowadays, I think that's just where it's going to go. It's just it has to go that way. You know, there's a lot of technology out there. A lot of it is accurate. How much more accurate do you need it to be? So, you know, the hardware is what it is. There's only so much you can improve on that. So the improvements are going to come from the software side.
Gotcha. So my Venmo circle is going to get wider as I'm paying out bets all over.
It is definitely going to get wider. So I think the PGA merchandise show is next month. So we'll see some new stuff, I'm sure.
Awesome. Question came in on syncing up resolution or ratio between the projector monitor and screen. I have a BenQ LK 936 short throw, a 4K monitor, and a 132 by 99 screen. Maybe more generally, and then if there's anything specific there that jumps out at you.
Yeah, so 132 by 99, if I'm doing my math right, that's a 4:3 aspect ratio. A lot of times, obviously, you're going to use the display for the PC. A lot of times, the software will have the ability to maybe add a secondary monitor, even if it's not the same. So syncing it up. That's why, again, you go through the resolutions, you go through the screen width, but at a 4:3 aspect ratio, you just can't get 4K. It's just not the same resolution. So you're going to have to do a lot of times we clone the monitors, but with the way, obviously you can't clone a 4:3 and a 16:9 or a 4 and a 4K. But within the software itself, a lot of times they give you the ability to split screen them, to clone them, even though they're not the same resolution. Foresight does a very good job of that. They ask you if you have a secondary monitor, and they basically take you through the settings and the resolutions of what you need to do.
Cool, thanks. We got a couple now that come in around commercial simulators. First one, general tips on opening a commercial golf simulator business in an area where golf is very new.
Say it again. I didn't see that.
Yeah. Can you provide any general tips on opening a commercial golf simulator business in an area where golf is very new?
Wow. So first of all, I would go to Yardstick Golf and get the and download a business plan and the financials. I wouldn't worry about. Kind of curious of what area golf is new.
Yeah.
There's not. I mean, if there's golf courses nearby, I mean, obviously, it's so popular nowadays. There's a lot of indoor golf centers going up. 5-iron golf is huge. They're going to start getting into franchising. We do a lot of their work in the simulator space, but it's just like you're running numbers. I would highly recommend use Reid, go to Yardstick Golf, get the financials. There's a lot of data out there with regards to number of golfers. They can get targeted within a specific area, but with the popularity of golf, quite frankly, if I was in a new area with golf and people want to learn it, I think to me that would probably be fantastic to be able to set it up, because it's a great place to learn golf. You're indoors, it's a controlled environment, the data is good, it's fun. So people, especially with the younger generation growing up with computers and software, it's great for them. Obviously, you got the top golfs of the world when it comes to entertainment, but in an indoor center, a lot of people like to learn there because it's more private. They're not outside making a fool of themselves. They're not at the driving range and people are looking at them. They get embarrassed. Learning to play golf, people are afraid. What's the etiquette? There's a lot more things to learn playing outdoors and indoors, and indoors are just a great way to learn how to play golf, hit the ball.
Yeah, and for me, I'd say one, you're a business, so make sure you think about it like a business, right? You need to manage your expenses. You need to think about your marketing plan, staffing, insurance, all of that stuff that goes along with running a business. It's more than just getting the sims and finding a facility. And then little things like, it takes a while to get started. So while you're doing the build out, get a sign up, let people know what it is, right? So get the buzz going before you get started. Right. And then remember that you're in entertainment. Make it fun, make it interesting, do a good job with customer service, try to drive repeat business. And like Joe said, one of the cool things I've seen is I've seen some of the facilities partner with colleges in their adult education, right? And so the college will offer the class, but it takes place at the facility and it gets you new customers and exposure and a little bit of revenue. So things like that. Yeah. Next one, it looks like it might be from one of your customers, Joe. They own an indoor golf center that was installed by ACE. Have questions about sustainability of an indoor golf center.
As far as being busy year round, I don't know, what's the,
Yeah, it doesn't have any context. Maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe the person who asked that question, if you could give us a little bit more to go on by what you mean on sustainability, we'll try to answer that.
I,
So go to
I
the
think
next one. Revenue expectations for a commercial or daily fee course application. So I think this is like, what do you expect in terms of revenue on a commercial sim facility? And I'll give you a chance to answer, Joe, but I do have a calculator on the website. So if you go to Yardstick Golf, there is a revenue calculator, and you can put in some assumptions about, the number of hours you're going to be open, how many simulators you have, that sort of thing, and it'll give you some estimates on what your revenue expectations might be.
yeah, I'd recommend doing that as well, Reid. I think the main question you want to ask when opening up an indoor center is, are you going to be geared towards entertainment, or are you going to be geared towards game improvement? A lot of the original centers that you see out there that are older were all geared towards entertainment. I would challenge that and say you have to do both nowadays. If you want sustainability throughout the whole year, I think you got to be open and have the tools necessary to do both entertainment and game improvement. Seasonality obviously is a big factor. Your location, are you are you in the northern climate, southern climate, Midwest where it's mild? That will, if you're in like a mild climate, I would highly recommend probably gearing it towards more game improvement. So with that said, your facility is going to look different. Your technology, your software are going to be different. Do you need force plates, balance plates? Do you want video analysis cameras for game improvement? Do you need to go all decked out with the software and the best of the best? What are the aesthetics? Do you serve food and beverage? If you're going to do it more towards entertainment, I would highly recommend having some type of food and beverage. Adult beverages at the very least. If you don't want a full kitchen, which is difficult and expensive, have some type of food, have some relationships with some local restaurants where they will, you'll provide their menus. They'll provide a delivery service. A lot of these places will give you, like, maybe you negotiate a 10% kickback for doing nothing and sending their customers to you. There are a lot of different ways to skin the cat. And again, I would just go through, again, calling Ace or working with Yardstick, asking what other people are doing. I've done market studies on specific, we did one up in Boston originally. So we did a whole market survey. How many golf courses are in the area? What are the daily fees for the public golf courses? That's typically what you charge per the hour on an indoor facility. Reid, you mentioned work with colleges, working with high schools, working with local unions, finding out with the public golf courses, who are your league presidents, because chances are if they're going to be outdoors, they can easily do an indoor league as well. So there are a lot of ways to kind of get revenue, but you got to sometimes think outside the box. And with us, doing it for as long as we have, we can certainly help, answer those questions and give you some ideas.
Hey, since you mentioned off season, I was going to ask you this question, see how much you're seeing. Like, it's funny, like we just moved my son into an apartment, and they actually have a golf simulator at his apartment. And it's one of the multi-sport simulators where you can kick the soccer ball into the goal, you can play dodgeball, you can see that kind of stuff. Do you see many commercial applications of that? Is that, bring in other types of entertainment, or is that more novel and really not worth it for a commercial center?
We do see it. Again, I would just, as we go through the questions of what are you trying to accomplish? That's what I would, do you want a bunch of kids hitting golf ball? Do you want adults hitting golf balls and playing around a golf next to a bunch of kids hitting a soccer ball? Sometimes that, and especially if you're going to do adult beverages and food and you want to do more upscale, I'd probably recommend against that. If you're more of a country club and you have to accommodate everyone, then yes, I probably would do a multi-sport. A lot of the amenities that we see in commercial buildings, people don't play golf, so yes, I will include a multi-sport. We did one out in Vegas where we had golf, multi-sport, a shooting simulator, and we put VR cameras up in the overhead so they can do a VR system, virtual reality in there as well. So we had, and like obviously you can always make it a home theater and watch the game and rent it out for that. So it can be multi-use. It just depends on what your niche is going to be with regards to your facility. You know, you can't make everybody happy. If you want it to be core golf, then no, don't do anything else.
All right. We just got another one. Access walls on either side of the screen. Would you recommend going away from an enclosure and instead just doing a frame to mount the screen, and then floor to ceiling wall protection like you mentioned before for a more refined look to the room?
If
So
you
that
have
sounds like there's access walls on either side. What gives the best look? Is it the enclosure or doing something a little bit more custom frame out?
we always do a custom frame out. It typically works. If you do an enclosure, you're not going to maximize your space. So if you want to maximize your viewable width, what we do typically, I think you guys I think you have one of the slides, Reid, that has kind of a setup that we do.
Yeah, hang on a sec. My mouse is a little wonky whenever my phone gets near it. It's the Bluetooth. There you go.
You got the other one? I thought there was another one.
This one.
Yeah, so in the black you'll see our wall protection, but if you look closely, so the way we do it is we put 2x4s the flat way up against the wall and up against the ceiling. So we actually build our screen frame using the walls in the ceiling, so to max out your viewable image. So we'll use the 2x4, we'll use angle iron. The way we hang it, or the way I do it, probably 2,000 screens, maybe more is what I've probably hung in the last 19 years. So the way I hang it is I use 2x4s, I use angle iron, I use Velcro, cable ties across the top and in the four corners. So the way I do it is I loosely hang the two top corners. I put cable ties, the bottom grommet on the bottom. I tighten that to make sure that the screen is flush against the floor. And then I will gently tug up the top to get a nice, as you can see there, there's, you know, it's just kind of it's just like flat lines, right? Down the side, across the top. I use bungee cords on the sides, so there's a lot of flexibility, but it's taut enough that you won't get wrinkles and it'll stay pretty tight. But the ball won't trampoline back as well. So there's some trial and error as you do it for the first time to make sure it's hung tight enough that you won't get wrinkles and it won't have too much give as it hits the screen, but you want it tight enough that it's and loose enough that it won't trampoline back the ball. So, but that I would recommend using the two walls in the ceiling versus putting an enclosure in. I think it just looks better.
On the planning for this in terms of building up the frame, like the gapping on the sides, 3-4 inches, was that?
So we're usually right around 2 or 3 inches. And then we have basically we call them carpet pads and gap pads that we use in between the screen and the 2x4s. And then we have some, a 6-inch width, 2-inch thick memory foam pads that we wrap, and then we just Velcro them to the carpet pad. So it gives basically it frames out the system real nice. It looks like a TV. So all you see is white, which should be a perfect 16:10 or a 4:3 aspect ratio. So you see all white, you see the picture, and then you see black. So it really frames it out pretty. So you see the Velcro, the rows of Velcro. So that screen right there is 16:10 once we put everything up, and all you're going to see is picture in black. So it'll kind of like a TV.
Changing gears a little bit here, got a question about the RCT balls. You want to explain what those are and like what's your opinion in terms of, is it worth it? Do they provide more accuracy? Are they helpful in simulation?
They do for radar based. So if you're going to do a radar based system, they're provided by Titleist. TrackMan kind of spearheaded that. So if you're going to do a TrackMan or a radar based, and the RCT ball, they got, there's in the ball, it gives the ability for the radar to actually read the spin much better. So if you're going to do a radar and you want the most accurate data, I'd highly recommend doing RCT balls. They're around 60 to 70 bucks a dozen. but they will provide the best accuracy for radar. For a camera base, you can use, most of the time you can use any ball, but there are limitations depending on the technology. So just make sure you read. So if you call us, we'll advise you what your options are. But if you look up any of the technologies on the internet, they'll tell you what the limitations are. But highly recommend RCT for radar based.
Okay, thanks. Question on removing wrinkles. I think earlier you talked about using a steamer as a way to remove wrinkles.
It is. Again, it depends on the material. Sometimes it creases if you get some of the thicker, more stiff materials. But a lot of times you can put it lightly in the dryer, or you can use a steamer, or maybe you need to hang it a little bit tighter.
All right, a couple more commercial questions for you. What's the best size screen and/or space for opening a retail shop with 6 to 10 units?
So generally speaking, I prefer 15-foot width, 20-foot depth, 18 to 20-foot depth, and 10-foot high for a footprint for each simulator. So roughly 300 square feet. If you're asking 6 to 10, how many? So generally speaking, between the simulator and the seating, I would budget about 500 square feet per sim for a center strike system, and then obviously whatever you want for bar, kitchen, etc. So for generally speaking, I would say, hey, you know what? If you're looking for a building to lease, I'd highly recommend about 500 square feet per sim plus common area space.
Gotcha. Another question here. I have prospective golf course owners asking me what they can expect in terms of an ROI if they add a couple sim bays in the clubhouse. The hourly rental is easy, but do you have any sense of what they can expect with other things like food and beverage revenue?
Well, speaking of Yardstick Golf, as a general thumb rule, unless it's changed, typically you're looking at about whatever you're going to do in golf revenue, it's typically about 50% in food and beverage. So if you're going to do, $30,000 a year, you're looking at about 15 grand that you can add for food and beverage.
And then, I think this is probably one of those that's going to be, it depends on what folks are looking to accomplish, but, share your thoughts on what you recommend in a commercial situation for choice of simulators.
I typically lean towards unicorn for an indoor facility. I just do. A lot of people, we've done track bands, obviously big with 5-iron golf. Foresight's another good one. True Golf is coming out with their Apogee unit, but we're seeing more and more unicorns. The IXOs, they're at a great price point. It's an overhead unit. They're very reliable. They work with third-party software. I'm a fan of E6 Connect, GS Pro as well. But there's Golf Zone. I mean, you got X Golf. So there's a lot of. It really depends on your budget. But most of the ones that we've done recently kind of are leaning towards the unicorn products.
What would be the minimum number of hitting bays you'd recommend for a new business? And is an attractive space more important, or is it more important to have top of the line simulation equipment?
I hate to punt on this, but I would say both. If you're going to create, again, this goes back to, are you an entertainment facility or are you game improvement? If you're entertainment, then I think you need to have, at the very minimum, you have to have accuracy and what courses. People want to play the courses they see on TV. So software and accuracy, I mean, obviously, if they're not accurate, people won't come back. They have to be reliable. No technology is bulletproof, but you obviously, every hour you're down, you're losing revenue. And the software, the number of courses and the names of the courses. People want to see name brand courses that they see on television, or ones that are like destinations like Pebble Beach, Bandon Dunes. Both GS Pro and E6 Connect are great softwares because they have such a large variety of name brand courses. But again, I'm going to go back to like a 5-iron golf, the aesthetics of the place. you want to create a place where people want to come hang out. If you're more of a practice facility, you can do more bare bones. People want to come in and hit golf balls. They want to do game improvement, get their data, maybe take a lesson, maybe get fitted for clubs, maybe see video analysis, and they're going to leave. They're not going to come there to drink and hang out and watch TV. But if you're going to do an indoor facility, again, run your numbers. Use the financial spreadsheet that Reid has at Yardstick Golf. But I recommend no less than 4. It's a numbers game at that point. And I think you have to have adult beverages. A lot of states have wine and beer licenses versus full liquor licenses. Liquor licenses in some states are hard to get. They're expensive, and the insurance is more. So, but a wine and beer in some states, if they allow it, is all you need. If you're selling beer and you sell wine, that is enough to make sure you make some good revenue on the food and beverage. But if you're going to do an indoor center, especially on the entertainment side, I quite frankly, in my opinion, it's a requirement. You have to have at least adult beverages and either some snack foods, finger foods, sandwiches, or you work out something with a restaurant nearby where you get a little bit of a kickback for whatever customers buy food from there.
Gotcha. We're coming up here, our plan was to go an hour. We got about, 8-9 minutes left. So I kind of put a final round call out there for questions for folks if you're thinking about asking. We have a couple more here. What's the best recommendation for an in-home simulator? Best configuration for entertainment, basic club and ball data. So I think this might be, I won't say entry level, but maybe budget recommendation for at-home simulator that'll give them entertainment so they can play courses and then get some basic club and ball data.
So again, that'll kind of dictate your space. There's so many nowadays. You got the iMini, you got a GC3, you got the Rapsodo, you got the Mevos, you got the SkyTrax. So any of those would work in the configurations. It really, obviously, you can voice caddy. You can go for $600-700 up to about $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. You got the full swing unit, the Tiger unit. That's about $4,000. So there's a lot. We call it the race to zero. A lot of these units are pretty good nowadays. They're accurate enough. Most of them are trying to provide some type of basic club data, but most of them work with third-party softwares. So if you want to do like an Awesome Golf or a GS Pro, their annual subscriptions, you can buy a lifetime, but a lot of them, could be $200 a year, $600 a year for the full package at E6 Connect. But again, there's a lot of information out there, and at Ace Indoor Golf, we provide a free 30-minute consultation. I'd highly recommend calling and letting us know, what you're looking for, what your budget is, what your space look like. Is it narrow? Is it short? Can you swing a club in it? So call us, let us go through the consultation with you. And again, we're very agnostic. We'll get you the best deal we can at your budget and pretty much configure something that's specific to what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I'd also share, if you go to the Golf Simulator subreddit, I've got a resource pinned to the top of the page, and it's essentially a spreadsheet that's got probably 15 to 18 different simulators, their prices, the data they track. And I run about every other year a survey of owners, and it'll give you some sense of like, would they buy it again? How do they rate it? So that'd be another way to look at maybe homework before you call Joe to narrow down the choices that you're looking at. Let's see, we've got anything jump out at you, kind of 4K simulator monitor and PC recommendations?
I mean, the BenQs are always good. They're reasonably priced, and so those, a lot of times people go with those. But I would just again, I would go through the configure, figure out what your screen size is going to be, figure out where you're going to mount the projector. But what I will tell you is we've done side-by-side comparisons with the laser projectors and the 4Ks. Believe it or not, most people chose the laser projector over the 4K projector. The software and the speed of the computers, a lot of the software really truly does not run on 4K. So I don't think it's necessary, in my personal opinion. A lot of the laser projectors are going to be a little bit cheaper, and quite frankly, based upon testing what we've had people come in and take a look at as an eye test, it seemed like most people actually chose the laser projector. They just seem to have a little bit crisper image.
Enclosure depth, I'm going to try to run through these quick. For a 12-foot ball to screen distance, would 10-foot enclosure be best, or would you do a 5-foot enclosure with, additional, looks like 5 feet of net work? And I'm guessing that's sort of the side folks are looking at.
So you can get it's basically an extension read. So I would tell you, it really depends on your application, the skill of the golfer. If you're at home, I think 5-foot enclosure would be enough, especially if you're a pretty good golfer. If you're in a commercial environment, I'd highly recommend going the 10-foot enclosure. Depending on how the netting is attached to the enclosure, and if there's aluminum exposed or steel exposed for the framing of the enclosure in a commercial environment, I would probably recommend just going with 10 feet. So that really depends on whether it's for a residential or commercial environment. But for our enclosures are 5-foot in depth, our standard. We got an enclosure that's 12-foot wide and one that's 14-foot 6 inches wide, both 5-foot depth and around 9-foot tall. Those are usually good for homes, but if you're going to do a commercial environment, I recommend doing something that covers the golf ball where you're hitting from, because you will get people doing things that you just, where the ball ends up or where it hits, you'll scratch your head and figure out how it happened. And better to be safe.
Cool. Is it possible to have an enclosure side fold up on some sort of hinge? I think this is somebody looking to maybe save space when they're not in use. Collapsible, retractable sim sort of applications.
So we don't do that. There's a company called Home Course that has something. It's okay at best. If it's a need, where basically it retracts the screen down, and it has the sides kind of fold out. Again, it's probably not the safest thing, but if that's what you require in a home to save space, it's a decent unit. The other thing I would recommend, our screens typically go about 10 inches to 12 inches off the wall. And then maybe think about doing some type of retractable curtain where the curtains retract right back to the screen, or at least close to it. So there's a couple of options. I'd have to look at the room, get pictures of the space and some dimensions to kind of figure that out.
I've seen a number of folks post their DIY versions of those on the Golf Sim subreddit. So if you search on it, you might find a few. There's a lot of it's garage application. All right, let's see. Maybe I'll try to get one more in here. Room acoustics, mixed usage with cinema application, overhead versus ground launch monitor, spotlighting on the hitting zone, and how to have a home theater with sim where there's speakers behind the screen.
So we definitely do that. So our screen system, especially for home use, is a 2-piece screen system. It's a perforated kind of mesh, and then we put another screen up against it, but the sound will come through. Again, you have to have again, depends on budget and how nice you want it to be, but our screen systems are very, very good for home theaters. And again, at that point, obviously you're going to want a higher end projector. But we do a lot of combos between, people who say, hey, you know what, when I'm not playing golf, I want to watch a movie, watch the game, etc. But a lot of people, it definitely is dual purpose at this point. And then quite frankly, what we do standard is always dual purpose. Either it's the projectors are always hooked up to a computer, so you can get obviously your Netflix, your Primes. Other TV systems are or since we have 2 HDMI ports, you can use an HDMI port to hook up right to the cable box.
Gotcha. All right, Jay's begging us to go a few more minutes. Joe, do you have a little extra time?
I do.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, we'll get Jay back. Don't worry about it.
Okay, excellent. Just so long as you get them. other than features, are there advantages to moving up from good, better, best? Like, I guess just in terms of upgrading the simulator, aside from features, is there anything that you see that, would be compelling that you would, move up market?
I probably would say, obviously outside the aesthetics of the simulator, probably your data, your ball data and your club data. I think as you get higher end, you're going to get more club data. Things you just don't get with the lower end products. It's just going to be, I mean, if you're just looking to hit balls and you're, I don't know, 15, 20 handicap, it probably is okay to the lower ends, but as you get higher end, you're basically looking at more accurate data and more additional data.
I don't know if this is answerable, but is the BenQ LK936 short throw really worth it, or is it overkill?
It depends if you need short throw. A lot of people think they need short throw when they don't. It's okay to have your projector mounted behind you.
What indoor systems would you recommend for home DIY with lower budgets in, say, the 10K neighborhood? I'm assuming 10K for the whole thing, not just for the set.
Yeah, I would probably, I mean, the GC3 and the iMini, you got the full swing kit. Those are probably pretty good. By the time you add the PC projector and some turf, you're probably looking at $10,000. But again, they're camera based. The Mevo Plus is a pretty good unit as well. So like there's a lot of options out there nowadays.
On a projector standpoint, are there brands or models that are considered the quietest? I'll give you, if noise is a concern for you on the projectors.
No, I think they're all pretty. I think they're all pretty quiet nowadays, especially if you go through the lasers when they don't have the bulbs and the fans going. So I would, any laser projector nowadays is going to be pretty quiet. I can't think of any ones that are really noisy nowadays. Not like back in the day. They're all pretty quiet nowadays.
From a PC spec perspective, somebody's looking to do BLP with GS Pro. Thoughts on PCs?
Yeah, I mean i7, 16 to 32 gig of RAM, at a minimum of a 3000 series graphics card. I wouldn't go any lower than 3000. 4000 is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a standard, but they're readily available nowadays. I'm always there's always a recommended spec, a minimum spec. I always tend to over spec it because as the software improves, and again, that's where the biggest improvements are going to come is from the software side. So I'd recommend it, especially, I mean, there's so many computers nowadays. I mean, between Best Buy and Costco's of the world, I probably would do a 4000 series graphics card. Most of these softwares are more graphics intensive versus processor intensive. So I would lean towards a 4000 series card.
Yeah. And I would say too, a really good website on it is PC Part Picker, right? You can get all compatible parts and design the system and, swap stuff out. And I think they pull prices from like Newegg and Amazon.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to go kind of spec out a PC for your sim. Well, I think that's it on questions. Joe, always impressed at the rapid fire Q&A and the breadth and depth that you can go in the space. Obviously that, has probably a lot to do with your technical background and the years you've been in the business. So really appreciate the time. And I think it was a lot of great information. Folks still on the call, we will share the video. And if you have other questions, you can hit info@Yardstick Golf or Ace. Do you have a specific email for questions?
So we have a full staff, sales, design, production, installation. So we handle everything. But if feel free to email me direct at joe@acendoor.golf, and then we'll get you to a sales guy, or if it's some generic questions that are easily answered, I will answer it. But we'll get your answers, to your questions regardless.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Joe. It's good seeing you again. Let me know how you get Jay back for these extra minutes.
That's pretty funny. I think Jay Stay pretty safe. I appreciate you guys setting this up, and thanks everybody for attending.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yep. See ya. Bye.
Reid, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, we need to hit something to stop the whole thing here, right?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing. So I did stop showing screen.
So we can turn the recording
I-
off.